first guest is a hell of a talk show host, a producer, a comedian, an activist, and a 6-time New York Times bestselling author. Not too shabby. Her new book is called Life Will Be the Death of Me, and You Too. It's awesome. I always love seeing her. Chelsea Handler, y'all. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good, honey. How are you doing?
I love your house.
I do too.
Oh my gosh. But anyway, life has certainly changed since we saw each other last. And I don't know, I guess it's in your own relative way happening in whatever's happening in your life. So how have you been handling that? Not only the quarantine, but there's the Black Lives Matter. There's just a lot going on right now. How are you handling everything?
Well, the quarantine started with, 2 weeks I did my own quarantine, and then my sister came down with her 3 kids. And so they invaded my house because what I realized when quarantine happened is like people start to get worried about me because I'm single. They're like, oh, Chelsea, she's alone. She's single. I'm like,
I get jealous.
Yeah. I'm like, this is exactly what I've been hoping for,
Yeah.
Like, I don't need anybody to look after me. I mean, I do need people to like work things around my house because I'm useless in that department. But so that would be helpful if I were going to get a boyfriend, if he were good at that stuff.
Yeah.
But so they invaded my house and they were here for 2 months. And so I had like a full house of kids and a mom, and we'd had dinners and played board games. It was like, it was sweet. I do. But it was sweet for like, to have that family vibe because obviously I'm single and very loud about that. And I'm childless. But also in quarantine, I've learned that like being single and childless is like, I made a couple of smart moves. It's like,
yes, it has been, yes, coming from a person who spent most of the quarantine with 3 children, it was a lot. I want to ask, because we're now finally having a real conversation about white privilege. I actually watch a lot of things you do, and because I'm a fan of yours. But last year you did a documentary called Hello Privilege, It's Me, Chelsea. And way ahead of the curve on that one. But what inspired you to do that, and what did you learn from it?
Well, I wrote my last book, Life Will Be the Death of Me, which was about going to therapy for the first time in my life. And when I did go to therapy for the first time in my life, after Trump was elected in 2016, I had a lot of anger and I had a lot of rage about him being elected, and I didn't understand. And so I had to like do some really deep digging to like what was going on with me and my reaction to that, and why I couldn't calmly discuss it instead of, with my veins popping out of my neck and tweeting like, while I'm sleeping, trying to actually get a hold of my emotions and be in a place where I'm responding, not reacting,
Yeah.
And through that work and like going to therapy seriously for a while, it was just obvious to me how I had failed to look around and see how the color of my skin has been such a benefit to my own success. So I was very interested in doing a documentary about finding out what does white privilege mean? Because to me, it just meant, people who go to Harvard or go to those, Ivy League schools or the Rockefellers, or I thought that was white privilege when I started that documentary. And then you learn that it's like, no, you don't have to go to an Ivy League school. Your family doesn't have to be wealthy for it to be a privilege to have white skin. You are benefiting from a system that is hurting other people. As long as people are hurting, then there is a group of people that are benefiting from that. That's just the way it works. And so it opened my eyes so much, and I just loved that film, and I had to say it. And it was a film to white people to say, listen, I know these conversations are uncomfortable, but we should be having them because we have a problem in this country.
And without you being uncomfortable, I don't think change will even occur. So you're a part of a protest in Los Angeles, or protests rather, in Los Angeles. So how did that experience make you feel? Because I have friends that have gone out, and there have been very different experiences depending on which protest and where you were and what happened. So how was your experience?
I went to a couple. One was organized by the LGBTQ community in West Hollywood. So it was like the most organized protest I've ever been to in my life.
I love those people. Organizations.
Like, oh my God, you guys should arrange all the marches.
Yeah.
That we went back and it was totally peaceful. It was beautiful and it was nice. I did go to the big LA one previous to that. that was in a big park, and then it took to the streets. And then that was one of the protests that, got a little bit out of control at nighttime, and it turned into looting and all of that. But I had left earlier on. As soon as the social distancing became impossible and like irresponsible, I felt like, okay, let me go. I've been here. So I went to, but I think, how did it make me feel? It made me feel great. I wish I had gone out every single day to protest, and I just feel like we have whatever every person is doing, and some people aren't doing anything yet because they're not sure what to do. But, we can all do a little bit more. We can just do a little bit more to broaden our awareness and learn a little bit more than we already know.
Absolutely. And even if you can't maybe go protest, it's like having those hard conversations with your family. And, depending on where you're from, like especially where I'm from, those can be very difficult conversations, but they're important for all of us if we actually want to see something happen and not repeat the same vicious cycle. But one of the things I found interesting about you, because I do think that you're really open, is that you said earlier, you were kind of against therapy. And then you actually ended up doing it. And it was a lot of it because dealing with the death of your brother, because I imagine that had to be kind of huge for
my
you.
brother. Yeah. I mean, I had this, crazy reaction to Trump, and then I was like, this is unmanageable, my outrage. And people were like seeing me coming, and they're like, ooh. So and then he explained to me, over time and over a lot of work, that Trump being elected was really like the trigger of the only other time in my life where things were out of control. Even if you look at me as someone who's out of control, it's like, I've got my act together. I know what's up and what's down and what's happening, but it felt like the world was not in control. And he took me back to my childhood, which I didn't think I thought I was too smart to ever have to even go there, like I'm like,
I actually 100% know and go to therapy. So yes.
Right. So, you
think you're past it and you know it. And although you know the situation and although you think you figured it out, you just don't realize how much PTSD kind of comes into play when one thing triggers you like that.
Absolutely. And it was like, he took me back to my childhood and built on my relationship with my brother and reminded me of why there was so much pain inside of me that presented as anger, like underneath the anger is always something hurtful.
Deeper.
Yeah. And so I was acting out, and, it worked for me for most of my life, not addressing it, but eventually it catches up.
Compartmentalizing, only works for so long.
Eventually your leg is broken and there's no way to walk without crutches. And then eventually you have to go to the doctor and be like, can you patch me up the real way and the right way? So I had a great therapy experience, and that's what my whole book is about, is about therapy. And I thought, oh my God, if this is how I'm dealing with something that happened to me when I was 9, imagine how many other people have the same experience. And I've put so much out about, I've overshared, my entire career is about oversharing. So why not overshare this beautiful thing, that can actually help heal people. It helped heal me for sure.
And I guess I'm called an oversharer as well. But I mean, at some point it's like, I think that's also why people, tend to believe you when you say something, or tend to believe me when I say something, because it's always coming from a really honest place and there are no walls up in that instance. And I think, I don't know, sometimes I think like oversharing can be a good thing. All right. Well, thank you so much, Chelsea. Y'all have to get Chelsea's book, Life Will Be the Death of Me. It's available in paperback on June 23rd. Support your independent bookstores and support Chelsea. Obviously a great author. She's had like a billion #1 book. Subscribe to my channel. Subscribe to my channel. Subscribe to my channel. Subscribe to my channel. Please don't make me keep going.